Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura's Handmade Haven. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're continuing our quilt along for the Elizabeth Hartman Delightful Desert. I'm making the baby quilt size, which is just one of the sections, but you can also make a medium or large quilt, which would be either 4 or 9 sections of blocks. So I do have 3 of the blocks done. I have the cute little ringtail cat, the aloe plant, and the puma. This week we're going to be working on the cottontail block, cute little bunny. So we're going to cut out our fabric and then we're going to sew it up and display it along with the rest. Now I do have quite a few more blocks to go, so this will be block 4 of 9. If any of you are sewing along with me, make sure you go ahead and download that project sheet. You'll have labels for all your fabric, alphabet tiles for your pieces, and numbers for all of your fat quarter selections. So that is a really helpful little resource for you, and you can find the link to that in the description box below. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is cut out our fabric for the cute little cottontail block. Now this block is fairly simple. You only have your one focus fabric, and then you're going to use those 2 accent fabrics that we chose at the beginning, and we also have some background fabric for the fill-in areas for the block. So should be a pretty quick cut. Our letters go up through V on this, so we do have quite a few things to cut out, but it shouldn't be too difficult to keep track of what's what. All right, so according to the pattern, the first thing we're going to cut is our fabric 4. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started, get some other things kind of moved out of the way a little bit. Now, as I've told you before, I'm not going to be giving you any of the measurements. This is definitely a pattern that you should purchase if you want to make the quilt. And I don't really feel like you could make this quilt without the pattern because there are definitely a lot of pieces and a lot of steps. But it's not that difficult of a pattern, so don't let that scare you off from it. Just be aware that I will not be sharing measurements when I'm cutting. All right, our cutting is done and we will head on over to the sewing machine. All right, so here we are at the sewing machine. Just for anyone that may be joining in for the first time, I am using a Juki DX7. I do have the extension table that goes with my machine. I've had this machine about 4 years, I believe. I need to look that up sometime so I know that I'm telling you the truth. But I absolutely love this machine. The only thing I've had to do with it is just have regular routine maintenance. I do have the attachment that allows you to use the cone spools instead of the little spools of thread. I really like that. And I think other than that, that's pretty much all. I don't have the knee lift attached to it right now, but I do sometimes use my knee lift when I'm putting binding on quilts because it just makes it easier to lift and lower the presser foot. The foot pedal is programmable, and right now I have it set to just lift and lower my presser foot for me. All right, so let's get sewing. So the one thing that I've noticed about the Elizabeth Hartman patterns that are different from most of the Lori Holt patterns that I've done, the letters are in alpha order with the fabric that you're cutting out. So I cut out my fabric 4 and it was like A through J. And then I cut out the white and it was the K, and it goes on down through. So when you're putting these together, you'll have kind of like an assortment of letters from all over the place. So like this little section here, which is his cute little face, it has, ABC, but then it also has L and M because I brought in both of these black pieces of fabric. So that's one thing that, it's not that big of a deal. That's a good reason to label all of your fabric pieces because that way it makes them easier to find. But it's just something I noticed that I thought I would mention to you guys. Now I did press that seam to the dark side, the darker fabric, because I want to make sure that it doesn't create a shadow on the front of my block. This is the second part to this creating the little face. And so I do like to go ahead and lay those things out on my extension table. That way I just know that it's in the right spot. It looks like we have 2 of these stitch and flips to do. So we're going to get those done first. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of finger press these back. And here we have our cute little rabbit face. Cottontail face, so sorry. And then we'll just, so this piece here, this is piece N, I believe. It is a rectangle, even though it looks like a square. So just make sure you have it turned correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be like, oh no, I miscut this. But you probably didn't. It's just, it's a very close measurement. All right, so we're on figure 4, and I'm just going to tell you that this is piece R, and it is going to be tricky if you don't pay attention. Just look at the pattern, take it slow, and remember you can do this. But it looks kind of funky when you lay it on here, and you have to go corner to corner, but it's the corner of this and the corner of that. So I'm just going to lift this up a little bit and kind of position it on my washi tape where it needs to be, and that way I can just sew right across there without marking. Now for those of you that are savers, definitely you could probably turn this into a, I don't know, maybe a 1.5 inch half square triangle, but I'm just gonna toss it. Alrighty, so here, these are our ears. And I've just done some finger pressing on this. I haven't done any actual pressing yet. I am going to go slow and make sure I get all my seams going the way I want them. And you know that I am definitely ankly challenged, so I'm going to be taking a few of these steps kind of slow because there are a lot of the stitch and flip corners. So now we definitely have our cute little ears and our cute little face. And I'm sure many of you guessed that the white is the tail. So on piece H, which is this one, it is a rectangle. It is very close, but it is still a rectangle. So just make sure that you put this square on the right corner. And you may want to like double check it and triple check it before you actually cut that off, just to make sure that that is the right placement. Same thing with this one. This is piece J. Just make sure that you have that little square on the correct corner. I'm going to skip to figure 7 on page 14 just because before I do this last little tail, just because I don't want to have to cut my thread. Now this is another one of those where it's going to look kind of funky, and it is a little funky. I feel like I may have cut something wrong. I did. Let me fix this real quick. When I put these together, I was like, this is not going to be right. When I sew across this corner, that's not a square. So I knew that something was off. So I had to go back and double check the measurements. And lo and behold, I had a mistake in my cutting. It happens. That's why it's really good to obviously check your measurements and go slow when you're cutting, especially if you're working with limited supplies. If I would have had yardage for all of these things, then it wouldn't make me quite as anxious. But since I am only working with fat quarters, there is a little bit. So don't think that if you make one mistake that you're going to be out of luck for everything. But you definitely want to take your time and do your measurements. Now I'm going to press this to the darker fabric. Just finger press and make sure it gets sewn down that way. I had someone comment not too long ago about the fact that they love that I just press to the darker fabric or whatever, and I don't press all my seams open. There are advantages to both. I mean, if you press your seams open, your quilt top is going to lay a lot flatter. But I don't know. I don't like pressing my seams open. All right, this little tail gets sewn onto this piece here. Just gonna finger press these back and sew that down. Kind of depends on, I don't know, I do it both ways. Sometimes I'll put it so the seams are up so I can make sure they get pressed the right way, and other times I finger press them and just hold them into place a little bit. I sewed this on the wrong side. I don't know if you ever have to do any seam ripping, but this is how I do mine. I just go along the seam, and about every third or fourth, maybe fifth stitch, I just slash those. And then when I go to the other side, I'll grab one of the stitches. Of course, it works better when I'm not on camera. And the whole thing will pull out. All right, this goes on this side. So we will re-sew that. And then this little tail unit goes right here, like this. Told you, man, I am anglely challenged. My husband makes fun of me all the time. It's not just angles, but directions. Oh my gosh. I'm not good at direction. I have other qualities. And then sew this together, and then I can sew the head to the body. Wow, we are like one seam away. Then we'll have a press and a reveal, and we'll be good. Okay, so there's nothing to line up on this first side over here. It's just going to be the way it is. I am going to flip this one in just because, go to the darker fabric. And when I look at this seam, I'm going to flip this one this way just so there's no bulk down here on my tail. And again, this is because I'm not pressing open. If I was pressing open, it wouldn't matter. I want that seam to go the other way, so I had to lift my presser foot up there for just a second. Now when I get to this section right here, I'm going to briefly use these stitch and flip corners to line this up. So I have one seam going this way and one seam going this way, and that way they will nest and kind of lock, and that way I'll have a really nice, precise point when those two things are sewn together. All right, that's it for our cottontail block. We're gonna press it and then reveal it. I'm gonna take you with me to the pressing board just so you can see how I press these things together. Now I am confident that my iron is probably not still hot. I used to use this cute little vintage iron, and I think I might have to get it back out because the iron that doesn't stay hot. I love my Aliso, but I wish it stayed hotter longer. It has like an automatic shut off on it, which is good because I have forgotten a few times to unplug it before I left the room. But it's not good because sometimes it takes me longer to sew something together than I would before I get to the point where I want to press something. All right, so I'm just going to start over here and just give this a good press. And I'm pressing from the back to begin with. And I'm just following kind of like the way I finger pressed all my seams. I'm not trying to flip anybody or anything, and nobody's going to flip. And now if you do happen to have like a twisted seam or something, a lot of times you can take out a stitch or two and redo just the couple stitches, and you will be able to get it flat. And since this middle seam to sew the head to the body was last, that's why I'm kind of leaving it for last to press. Looks like I have one seam down here that needs to. Actually, we're going to go ahead and let that one go this way. Now you could definitely starch this as well if you want. I don't know, I guess I'm not in the mood to starch today. Most of the time I do. Must not be in the mood. All right, now I'm going to flip him over and give him one more nice little press. And just taking a little time right now to press him out will make it nice to put my blocks together. And I may actually even, kind of square him up a little bit. There is a finished or an unfinished block size in the pattern. So I may, trim him up a little bit. Most of the time I don't, though, to be quite honest. All right, there's our little cottontail block. So let's go put him on the wall with the rest of his friends. Here we have our little cottontail block. He is all ready to be put into this quilt top as soon as we get there. So this is 4 of 9 blocks. We're almost halfway, but the next one coming up might slow us down a little bit. The next block we're going to do is that huge crane block. I'm looking forward to it, and yet I'm not looking forward to all those pieces. There are quite a few. So if you haven't, make sure you download that project sheet that I've supplied a link in the description box so you're prepared with all of your alphabet letters. And then also just, gather your fabrics, gather your supplies, and we will tackle the crane block together next time. Until next time, find joy in all you do. Carve out some time for crafting and creating. And remember, it's always better when you make stuff up.